Hello everyone, Steve Richardson here. Just waiting another 30 seconds or so, a few more people yet to join us, and then we'll make a start. Excellent. I think that's pretty much everybody. Hello again. Welcome to today's webinar, Business Appraisal Planning. My name is Steve Richardson. As you know, I'm sure you'll all agree, we've all been affected by COVID to some extent. And today's about the steps that we can take to make sure that your business has the best possible chance of recovery. I'm your moderator. So for those who haven't been on the Zoom meeting before, there's basically one or two settings. So first of all, questions. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions after today's webinar. So right at the bottom, you'll see a Q&A button. Just click that, type your question in, and we'll try to answer it towards the end of the presentation. You'll also see a microphone with a mute. Clearly, you'll be muted during the presentation. And if you need, for any reason, to leave the meeting, then on the bottom right-hand corner, there's a leave meeting. Okay, without any further ado, here is my colleague and fellow director, Steve Price. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve. Thank you very much. So smooth seas don't make skillful sailors. Well, what exactly does that mean? Well, I think it means now is the time for us to step up as business owners. Now is the time to think outside of the norm. We need to appraise our business, our threats and opportunities, and find the right way forward. So last week we ran what we called the Booking the Trend series as a build-up to today's presentation. And what we tried to do is a spotlight on some of our clients who have managed to do just that. Skillful sailors, you might say. What we managed to do was to help other business owners to take inspiration from their stories and spread some positivity at the same time. And so thanks, Steve, for the introduction, and thank you to all for attending our webinar today. It's the first one, it's the first webinar we've run for a few weeks. I'm sure you've all been invited to a multitude of webinars over the recent weeks, and so we stood back a little. We didn't really want to add to the somewhat overload. But this webinar today gives a different message from some of our previous presentations. So where we've previously talked about survival, and that might have been in the shape of business continuity planning or cash flow or some of the government updates that we were broadcasting, now we're encouraging you to plan for going forward into what we're calling the new normal. So let's just have a look at today's agenda then. We're going to be having a look at closing the disconnect, and then we're going to be talking about the need to reinvent yourself and what that might mean for your business. We'll then take a look at budgeting, which is obviously an integral part of this, and that will be covering that from a personal level and a business level. The opportunities, vulnerabilities, and critical challenges that may lay ahead. Identifying and managing risks, that's a big part of this type of planning. Looking at your goals and actions, and then pulling all of this together into how it might look as a plan or a package plan for you. Your next steps that we would encourage you to take, if there's any support we can lend, and then obviously at the end we will have a Q&A section. So, but before I just get stuck in, I just want to throw in what you might see as a disclaimer. We're not insolvency practitioners. I think you're well aware of that. But there are very strict rules and regulations around solvency, and some of which have been amended to account for the impacts of COVID-19. But if your business is unable to continue to trade as a result of solvency, then we will be able to refer you to insolvency practitioners, but that's not what today's about. Today's about rebuilding business and building off a solvent base. Okay, so let's have a look. And before I get started, I just want to share some thoughts about how we can stay better connected at this time. I'm not talking about how we stay better connected through technology and whether we're going to be using Zoom and things like these webinars. I'm coming from the perspective of how we can work together more effectively now and in the future, where your expertise can be combined with ours to create outcomes that wouldn't be possible by working alone. So in our view, it's never been more important to create and connect with a team of people who can help you at this time. So people like your banker, your legal or HR advisor, your accountant, your bookkeepers. And so that together, you can come up with a far better plan. At Inspire, our core purpose, I hope you'll be aware, is crunching numbers, inspiring business, and improving lives. And hence why we're running this webinar today. We hope that you're able to take some inspiration from this webinar. And we hope that the outcomes that you can take can have a positive impact on your business and on your personal life going forward. This should be just the beginning of how we can work together. So please take lots of notes. Don't be shy about asking questions, and let's crack on. So I'm going to start with the need to innovate. During times of adversity, we're often forced to think outside the box, to reinvent the way we work or behave. Now, we see 4 main opportunities for you to reinvent your business. And the first opportunity is to innovate. And according to the Oxford English Dictionary, it defines innovation as the introduction of new things, ideas, or ways of doing something. A great example that we saw during the pandemic was one of our clients, the No. 6 gin bar in Sale. Now, having been told to close their doors by the government in March, they used their innovation and started running online gin tasting sessions through Facebook. Not only did this help them to keep the business running, but it was so popular, it helped them to significantly increase their profile, and they even ended up getting some national TV exposure. They took their existing product and sold it in a different way. Now, we featured an interview with the owners in the Booking the Trend video series we ran last week. I hope you managed to catch their inspiring story. In this sense, innovation is doing something completely different. An example for you might be to introduce a new product line or service. The second way to reinvent is to re-engineer. Again, the dictionary defines re-engineering as to change and improve the design of a product or system, or in other words, to use what you've already got to produce something completely different. And so we've got another great example. This is coming from a company who changed their production lines from producing gin to putting the alcohol into sanitizer gel. And again, it was one of our clients. It was Tarsier Gin. I know Tim is on the webinar this afternoon. And again, we featured my interview with Tim in our Booking the Trend video series. By the way, just another slight disclaimer: not all our clients are in the gin industry, by the way. The third way to reinvent your business is to adapt or change the way you deliver products or services. Remember the biological definition of adaptation, which is the process by which a species becomes fitted to its environment. So in other words, if we take the new normal or the new environment that we find ourselves in, how can we change to suit that environment better? We saw an example of this when Gemma from Sonder Radio talked us through how they use technology to keep people connected. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, we've done that as well, but Sonder work around the elderly and in care homes, so it wasn't nearly as easy as she made it sound. So we know we can reinvent in 4 ways. We've looked at innovation, we've looked at re-engineering, we've looked at adaptation, and now for number 4, what I'm going to call widening your lane. What we mean by widening your lane is to broaden your product or service offering. And so again, we've got another example coming out of that series we did last week, the Booking the Trend series. And that was with the team at Serra Cyclone, and they run a bicycle recycling shop based in Stockport. they adapted their service to include bike repairs and even went as far as providing bikes for the NHS nurses to safely get to and from work during lockdown. So with these 4 ideas in mind, innovation, re-engineering, adaptation, or broadening your offering, what can you do in your business? So this is what business appraisal planning is all about. Okay, so there is a natural order in which to reinvent your business. With business continuity planning, we ask you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Business appraisal planning is no different. Remember that the business is there to serve you and not the other way around. You should not be a slave to your business. I know I say that all the time, but I make no apology for repeating it. That is the center of everything we talk about. So step 1 is to put your shareholder or your owner hat on and define what you need to get from your business. Can you make savings in your own personal spending to reduce the cash flow strain coming out of the business? No doubt you've made savings during lockdown. Can you continue to make savings? Updating your personal budget is best done using a template so that you don't miss any expenses. And an easy way to develop that is to look at your bank statements online to see what you typically spend in a month. But of course, be realistic. Over the last few months, there have been limitations on what we can spend. So maybe you might need to go back to months prior to lockdown to have a genuine look at what your personal spending looks like. Once you've done your personal budget, you can build up your revised business budget. Many of you might have already done a business budget for the year. Some of you might have done your budgets alongside with us. This is likely to change significantly now. And we recommend doing this in what we call a bottom-up process. So you start with the increasing cash that you want to achieve for the year. It's important to start here, as many businesses have found that they didn't have a sufficient amount of cash or a war chest of cash going into the lockdown. So if you look at this list here, I'm not trying to be over technical here. Excuse me, we just want to show you how we can take control by going back through a high level step-by-step process. So let's have a look at it then. If this is where we start off, we have a look at the other cash movements. Now you may be able to free up cash by reducing debtors or your stock or your work in progress levels, or by negotiating better terms with your suppliers. We covered that to some detail in our Getting Paid webinar a couple of months ago. Then have a look at the loan principal. You need to allow for the principal repayments on any existing or perhaps even new finance. Then we might have a look at asset purchases. Are there any new assets you need or any obsolete ones you might be able to sell? Then we need to have a look at the drawings. I referred to this as part of personal budgeting. What drawings, what draw from cash do you personally need to take? And once we've had a look at adding or subtracting, all of these will be able to create our target profit after tax. We then do a quick backwards tax calculation to derive the net profit before tax. And then we'll have a careful look at the overheads to see if any savings can be made at this stage. And of course, once we've done that, we arrive at the gross profit stage. So if we then use our desired gross profit percentage, you can derive the sales level required to give you what you need from the business. So this is the idea of starting at the bottom with what cash is needed and bringing all that this way to the top to understand what the sales are. Traditionally, budgeting is done the other way. So we do it from a bottoms up approach, and then it's all about reviewing these numbers and margins to ensure we can come up with a workable revised budget. And ideally from here, if you do that on an annual basis, you then need to break that down into a month by month workable forecast. And this is where having real-time digital reports of your numbers is so important. So for example, if you identified that top line, your sales total for the year needed to be, let's say 500K, that equates to around 10.5K a week if your business is going to operate for, let's say, 48 weeks of the year. You want to have a system for recording how you're going against that target. Likewise, if you have a debtor terms of 7 days and your debtors are currently running at 41, you want to measure if that number is improving. So we strongly recommend you measure no more than 5 of your most important numbers. And we refer to these, as I'm sure you're aware, as key performance indicators, KPIs. Some examples might be daily or weekly sales, gross profit by product line or by service, your debtor days, etc., etc. And once you have the KPIs and the budget, it's important to have these numbers loaded into your monthly reporting system or dashboard so you can track your actual results against your budget. And we can help you with the most appropriate technology to use for your business. We help our clients design these dashboards. So once you know at a high level what your budget is, it's time to look at the opportunities that exist that might help you achieve that budget. And again, we recommend focusing on no more than 5 key opportunities. Think of the ideas we talked about earlier to reinvent your business. Opportunities could also be things like working in more of an online way with your team or customers. You may no longer need the same premises, or you may need to redefine the roles in your business. There may be new lines of revenue to pursue or other businesses to acquire. Other opportunities might be around the adoption of technology or systems to improve your efficiency or even your online communication. Taking the time to brainstorm all of your opportunities to improve your business is a very valuable and empowering exercise. I would suggest you don't leave any stone unturned when exploring what opportunities you might have. Of course, the flip side of opportunities is, of course, your vulnerabilities or your threats. What are the 5 biggest vulnerabilities in your business right now? It could be things like poor cash flow, a sustained downturn in the demand for your products or services. It could be poor debtor management, or it could be the problem with the banking commitments you've got in terms of finance. Naming these vulnerabilities enables you to make a plan to overcome them. You need to be brutally honest in your assessment of what these vulnerabilities or threats are. A rosy plan for your financiers is not going to pass in these difficult times. Once you've identified your 5 biggest opportunities and your 5 biggest vulnerabilities, you need to identify 2 or 3 of the most critical challenges. These might be things like deciding whether to liquidate or sell part of your business. It might be establishing an online sales platform or securing additional finance. But establishing what those top 2 or 3 critical challenges might be in your business. So we strongly recommend that you do a careful analysis of all the risks in your business. This is particularly important. We've already started to do this with some of our clients. The best way to do this is to complete what we call a risk register, which assesses the likelihood of each risk and then the consequences for your business if that risk is not mitigated. So using a very simple scoring method like this, we can actually divert where our priorities need to be. So in our risk register, I think it falls down into 10 categories. So let's have a look at those one by one. The first one is governance. And this looks at risks including poor planning or the lack of up-to-date policy or poor discipline, etc. around your business. Second one is leadership. Risks around communication or reporting within the business. The risks around products and services could be based around the lack of adaptation or innovation, as we were talking about earlier on. Operational risks may evolve around suppliers or the supply chain or contracts with your key customers. What about the risks in marketing? Maybe the marketing you've always done is now generating a poor return on investment, or maybe you're overspending on it. The need to adapt to e-commerce or online selling, risks around poor training or overselling even can be seen as a risk at this point. Very sensitive times. Obviously, there are risks in finance, so we might be undercapitalized. There might be a lack of sufficient cash flow, or the finance structure that we've always had in place might be inappropriate now. Obviously, there could be significant risks in HR. What about poorly managing the restructuring of a business? What about grievances coming from staff? The risks in the administration of the business could be all driven by a lack of automation with the processes you've got. And finally, what about the risk inherent in not adapting technology and not taking the the benefits of what that might bring to us in terms of the software or apps that we can use? So once you've identified the risks, you need to pull everything together into a cohesive plan, and obviously that needs goals. It needs goals, actions and responsibilities. Your business appraisal plan is much more detailed than your usual annual business plan, in that you get right down into the detail for each department of the business. Obviously the goals need to be smart and all actions need to be assigned to someone who then becomes responsible. These goals and actions should be updated regularly through some form of regular review process. At this time, we'd recommend a monthly review for at least 6 months, and then perhaps changing over to what is more usually used, which is quarterly. So let's take a look at how to pull all of this together now as a complete package. So it's different for each firm, and depending on your circumstances, that package, that whole plan may well include points we've just been running through. So it may include your personal budget, your risk register, your business appraisal plan, your business forecast, an updated organization chart. Well, if you do have a team of people in the business, and if you're applying for finance, then the finance application as well. That might be C-bills or bounce back, etc. You may not need to do all of this work at the same time. For example, you may have a sufficient cash flow now, so you don't need to apply for finance. Likewise, if you don't have a team, obviously you're not going to need the organization chart as part of that list. But what is important is that you establish what is right for you. What combination of this list do you need, and who's going to do them in your business? So let's have a look at the plan. Now, when we work with clients, this is the format that we take coming off the planning sessions that we do. So the pages I'm going to show you are just an example. They don't really refer to any genuine business, but this is how we go through it. So we have what might be called an executive summary at the start, which summarizes the situation. And then from there, you can start to have a look. And some of these figures are taken from the bottom-up budgeting that I referred to earlier on. You'll be familiar with these columns here. So first of all, we set our annual one. And then if we're looking at quarterly accountability, we would then break down into what needs to be achieved within the quarters. Of course, that could easily be monthly as well. Okay, and you see the second half of that chart that we were referring to earlier on one of the slides where we talked about bottom-up budgeting. We then have a look at the critical KPIs to be achieved, following on to, of course, the opportunities, the vulnerabilities, and the most critical challenges. So this is just a summary of what they are. The real value is when the team run through them. We've actually got a means of establishing a risk register as well. So the list I gave you before of the 10 different areas, if we look at this department by department, what risks might exist in the business? What mitigation strategy are we going to deploy against those risks? What might the annual goals be? What might be the achievable, accountable 90-day or quarterly goals? If there are goals, what actions are we going to take? And critically, for the sake of responsibility, who's going to do that? Who's going to take ownership of that, and by when? So by the time you've got to the bottom of this plan now, it starts with a very top level, high level, bottom up budgeting process that then rolls down quarter by quarter into pointed responsible tasks for each person, department by department. And this list was the one I was referring to a few slides ago. So I hope I haven't overwhelmed you with too much technical detail at this stage. My goal has been to share with you what business appraisal planning is all about and how you might start to do it. So what are your next steps from here? Well, I keep saying this, but doing nothing is not an option. We're entering into a period of business that isn't normal. Doing what you've always done is unlikely to give you the same results as you've had in the past. And then we'll use this adage of putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. The more sustainable you can make yourself right now, the better that's going to be for everybody. Make a plan to get through these challenging times and focus on what you can do as opposed to being buried by the worry of what might happen in the future by uncontrollable factors. And obviously, you need to know as our clients that we are here for you and we can offer you help. So how might that help work? Well, our recommended strategy is to complete a business appraisal plan. We've been receiving great feedback about how helpful this process has been for the number of clients who've done it so far. So if you haven't yet done your business appraisal plan, now's the time to do this, as it will form a great foundation from which to build your cash flow implementation or improvement strategy. It will also help with loan applications. So let's have a look at the options that we've put together. So option one, you could meet with us online so we can do this together, either as a one session, or we can break it down into a few, which most people tend to prefer. We'll send you in-depth pre-work to complete so you have time to consider the impact CV-19 has had on each department of your business. And we'll use that pre-work to guide us through the plan and set goals for each department. So this ensures that you're going to have a detailed plan and well thought out method to give your business the best chance of recovery. In option two, it's very much the same thing, but perhaps you want our assistance with working towards some sort of financing as well. Obviously, there was a big surge of this to begin with. We went through the process of understanding how useful the C-bills were to begin with. They've been to some extent joined or even replaced by the bounce back loans. But what does the future finance for you hold? Have you already taken finance? Have you not, but perhaps you'll need it in the future? So they are paid for services by us, and of course we're more than happy to provide these services. We've given you some indication of what the cost might be there. But the third option is if you need to talk about this some more, then I'll give you what's called a complimentary business recovery review, and we'll send you a business appraisal action list to complete, which is a condensed version of the plan. The option suits those of you who may have a small business that doesn't require a comprehensive business appraisal plan. And once you've completed this action plan, we can then schedule in a quick call with you to go through it, to review and see if we can help you in the next steps. So these are free resources, and I know some people on today's webinar I've spoken to individually about them. These are the sort of resources we can give to you for free. And then finally, if you're not sure at all, very happy to meet and talk with anybody during this time. I think we have been throughout the pandemic period, or the lockdown period, as you might describe it. More than happy. Don't suffer this yourself. Do step forward, and this isn't just about you spending money with us. On a free basis, we're more than happy to sit down with you and talk through, well, in an online version still because of the separation issue, but we're more than happy to talk to you about what your feelings are and your options are going forward. But if you're going to need to obtain business funding, we think it's vital you prepare a cash flow forecast. The loan needs to be repaid, so your business needs to generate enough profit to then convert the cash into making the repayments. So we all know a particular good example of this is in the bounce back loans. You haven't needed to generate one of those, and you've actually had to do very little to self-certify and get one of the bounce back loans. But what I'm saying to you is that's okay. It's part of the application process. But if you're going to take out a loan to the magnitude that's being made available, you really need a cash flow forecast and a plan to understand how best you're going to use that money and make the repayments once you start. So we know it may be better, it might be difficult to commit to spending money right now. And we do have different payment options available if you do want to go for one of the paid services. So please don't let cost be a barrier to this. Get in touch, we can talk it through. And if you do end up with a paid service from us, there are payment plans and arrangements we can put in place with you. So that ends the presentation. Steve, I don't know whether we've had any questions at all.
Yes, we have, Steve. First of all, this is from Sarah. Hi, Sarah. I love the idea of a business appraisal plan, but we're back at work and I'm absolutely flat out. How do I free the time up to do the work? Steve?
Yeah, okay. Well, that's probably quite a common issue. Flat out with work, I'm doing what needs to be done today. at the behest of my clients or whatever, and I'm too busy to plan for the future. What I would point you towards there is something what we call the achiever matrix. And that basically puts into a quadrant your time judged by how urgent it is and what value it has. And what we find a lot of the time is that the things that we find urgent today often can be delegated or outsourced, and the real value work can always be put on the never, pushed to the back. This planning exercise could be amongst the most important work that you're doing. So yes, we might win a sale today or we fulfill an order tomorrow, but this is about understanding how your business is best shaped into the new normal, that is the post-COVID era and beyond. This could be the difference between whether you're sustainable into the future. So I would ask you to have a look at this from what we call from the achiever matrix quadrant point of view, and have a look that this is the most valuable of time. We can talk you through that in more detail. Did you say it was Sarah? We can talk you through that in more detail and point to how you might be prioritizing your time. It's a slightly different subject than what we're talking now, but again, please don't let time and prioritization stop the real value of the planning exercise. I hope that's a sufficient answer, Steve.
Yes, excellent. Thanks, Steve. So Adrian's saying, and this I must admit came in before you started talking about funding the work. So I mean, he's concerned about cost. He doesn't think he can actually afford to do this work. So what can we suggest? I know, we talked about various funding options, certainly that we can offer. Anything else, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just reiterate what you've said, Steve. Absolutely. There was a slide, perhaps this question came in before the slide, so it's fair enough, but there was a slide in which I've said, there's a paid for version and the resources we can give you to hopefully give you this to take on yourself. But if you do want our support, and obviously that, we level ourselves at, I think I said right at the start of the presentation, it's when we bring your knowledge and skills together with ours that a plan can be most effective. And if you do really want to take the opportunity on that, we are more than happy to talk about payment plans.
Excellent, thanks, Steve. And last one at the moment. So David asks, how are the sessions conducted? So at the moment, David, we're doing them online via Zoom, and we anticipate that's going to be the case for the foreseeable future, certainly. So we can generally split these down into short sessions, so there's not too much to take in all at one time. But yeah, Zoom is the way, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. At some point we will be getting back into a physical positioning, but I think at the moment we've done our own risk assessment in the office, and Zoom is the way. It's been an invaluable tool, no doubt, to yourselves as much as us. And we talk about new norms, new ways of doing things. You might be quick to realize that's our new way of doing things. We've already done some of these sessions via Zoom. The value and the content is not lost. We're more than familiar with using online presentations now. So, yeah, Zoom is the way, at least for the foreseeable future. Steve, is that the last one?
Yeah, that's just about it. Yes, Steve.
Okay. All right. Well, it simply remains for, I think, Steve and myself to finish off. Thank you once again for giving us your time today. I hope we were able to answer the questions you had, and of course, you know where we are if you do have more questions. When you leave today's webinar, you're going to be redirected to our questionnaire. I'd really appreciate it if you would spend the 2-3 minutes just to fill it out. If there are any resources that you'd like us to send you, that's your chance there to ask for them. We'll get them sent across to you via email. So yeah, once again, thanks for your time this afternoon, and all the best for your business appraisal planning.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week. Bye.